We finally know the day that the stars will align for the release of season 6, and we will see the return of the Dragon Prince on July 26th, 2024. And while it is worth celebrating that we finally know when we can expect it, the teaser trailer attached to the release date was the most exciting thing of all. We're gonna take a look at everything that we got in that trailer, and sometimes beating at the beat of your own drum really does work in your favor. So, as a treat, we also got additional clips with the announcement for the video game, The Dragon Prince Sadia. So, we have a lot to get through. And, by the way, I will not necessarily be going in order because there's two videos. So, I'm just gonna organize them in a way that feels manageable and cohesive for my mind. So, with that disclaimer out of the way, let's dive on in. I'm gonna start with the pearl where Callum is staring at the prison during a council meeting, although if I'm not mistaken, this looks like the High Mage's office. And by the way, girl, get you some hot brown morning portion because this is probably gonna be another long one. But what I actually wanted to say was that I have heard some spoiler content from the first episode that some people got to see. So, as a disclaimer, that does trickle into how I'm seeing some of these things, but I also don't want to put too much weight behind them because unless I have seen it with my own two eyes, I don't know what's going on. Because, it's a game of telephone. Like how some people have explained some things may not be the way that I explain them once I get to see them. So, yes, I have heard some things, but I don't actually know what's happening. So, I just wanted to be transparent with you there. Back to the clips. They're in a council meeting in the High Mage's office where they are discussing how to prevent Aaravos from escaping. And Callum is pondering as he looks at the prison, which kind of reminds me of him looking at the Primal Stone in season 1. Then we have Callum and Rayla atop the castle walls, and they're leaving on the shadow paw, which leads us to this shot where we have Callum and Rayla on an icy landscape, which we can only assume is on their journey to the Starscraper. But moving along these traveling shenanigans, we see Rayla flipping through flames in a wooden setting that I'm inclined to think is a ship, but that doesn't have to be the case because that does beg the question, where's the shadow paw? Maybe above deck, but either way, we also see that Sneasels seems to have joined them on the journey in addition to Stella, and Callum casts a spell to get them out, and I imagine that these scenes will take place somewhere between episode 2 to 4. And speaking of these episodes, then we have Callum using his Staff of Sky to presumably rain thunder on this beast. And it's a rather interesting one at that because it has purple eyes in some clips, which is strange, but it's also wearing like a collar and it clearly looks like it has a crescent moon on it. And I do find that really strange. The only other thing that we've seen similar to this is Ava's collar, which helps maintain the illusion of having 4 legs. So yeah, that's intriguing, but I imagine that this beast or dragon is probably just an obstacle Callum and Rayla have to get through to get to the Starscraper. Like, it will give us some action, but I'm inclined to think that it will ultimately not be of much importance. Next up is Ezran and Zym having a hug before Zubea's restored portrait, and I actually love this because yes, the portrait was torn, but it was salvageable. So when it comes to Zubea herself, I feel like that is indicative of how she will also hopefully be restored to full health. Maybe she will have some scars, but she will still be her dignified self. And yeah, I don't know, I'm rooting for her. Then we have Zym, Soren, Hat, and Corvus waiting inside a fairy ring, or maybe it's just an arch of mushrooms and not a full circle. There also seems to be paths of mushrooms leading there, so I'm not sure. The point is that they seem to be waiting for news on Subea from Mako, the mushroom mage, and based on Corvus's gesture, I wonder if they got there and they were expecting to find them immediately, or perhaps they have actually been waiting at the specified location for some time and there's still no news. Moving on, we have Terry brushing Claudia's hair, which I love to see. They seem to still be at the Sea of the Cast Out, and I assume that this is definitely taking place before the teaser clip that we got of Claudia's true form, because in that clip we can see that her hair is almost all white, and here we see how she still has that half and half black and white hair, but in the teaser she only had a tidbit of black hair left. So I imagine that she will try to fix her leg somehow, and that is what will take a toll on her appearance. But This scene definitely takes place before that one. Then we have the ship that I ship with all my heart and that I'm rooting for in hopes that my heart will not be torn asunder. Janai and Amaya are embracing below this arch, and I don't know exactly what could be going on here, but I can't help but also think of Karim and Miana, who also kissed under an arch, but they were in the shadows while Janai and Amaya have their kiss in the light. And I love that. And a bit of a tangent, I know we won't get much of it in the show, but I have to say that I cannot wait for the novelization of book 4, where we can know more about this abandoned location that the Sunfire Elves are currently occupying, because it is so close to Luxaria, but it's clearly just ruins. So yeah, I'm really interested to know more about the history around this place. Back in Catullus' castle gates, we see Ezran standing with a few knights and Opeli behind him. And this to me is super exciting because when I made some predictions for what we could see based on episode titles, I had no clue what Ezran would be up to this season. And we do see that Soren and Corvus go off alone with Zym to look for Subea, so this to me is grounds for theories. First off, I think we need more King Ezran. Like, we have seen him as a diplomat with the dragons, but he is a human king. He has duties to his kingdom, and I want to see him in that role more. As for what he could encounter in that role, I would expect more attempt on his life because he is a child king, and it's just only natural that there be some defiance against his reign, especially because he's so friendly with the dragons and elves. And also because we got Callum asking Soren if there was a plot against the king. So, I would like that to maybe lead somewhere. But my more exciting theory here is that maybe what they're looking at here is Viren. Viren could be coming back. So let's look at that clip of Viren and Kapar. This is clearly a flashback to when Viren sealed Kapar in a coin, and for me, there are two possibilities here. Perhaps this scene takes place once Kapar is freed and he's explaining who he is and how he got in the coin, or this is a flashback that Viren has, and it gives him the motivation to return to Catullus and try to do right by his mentor by setting him free, because Viren is absolutely still alive. Like, that is unquestionable for me, but that begs the question, what now? Like, where should he go from here? When Viren marched on Sadia, he clearly left Kapar behind in his study, so I'm thinking that this is him that Ezran, Opeli, and the Knights are looking at. And another thing that gives this idea more validity is Opeli's presence to begin with. She doesn't look as hostile as she does worried because, Viren is supposed to be dead. I think we get a lot of Rayla's reaction to Viren's continued existence, but if anyone else would care about Viren, it is Opeli. They simply have a lot to their relationship, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't think that that's gonna be explored if this is actually what's happening. But I just wanted to put it out there that there is history between Opeli and Viren because they both served in the council under Harrow. And back to Opeli's expression here, Viren did unabashedly hate Opeli, most likely because she was made the High Council cleric instead of him. But I think that that feeling is definitely just one sided. Like, yes, Opeli opposed him because, she's the High Cleric, she didn't agree with him, and he often found ways to disregard authority, which naturally did not sit well with her. But I don't think that means that she hated him. So, I don't know. I just think that this could be her reaction to seeing the state of him now. I hope I'm right about this because we do need some of these plot lines to overlap, and it will bring some of these relationships full circle because Viren did try to usurp Ezran, so yeah. And one last thing about this clip, I watched the trailer frame by frame, and Kapar's left forearm seems like it was bleeding at that point, so it does poke some holes in my dream analysis, but you live and you learn, so let's move on. Here we have an establishing shot of the Starscraper, and it is stunning. As you know, I am a moon mage, but I also dabble in the Star Kingdom, so seeing this is absolutely magnificent. You can kind of see why it's the Skywing elves that inhabit this place. Like, how are people supposed to get up to the Nexus unless you can fly or beam up there, whatever it is that the Star Touch elves do. But speaking of the Skywing elves, we also have this view from inside the Starscraper where we see the sect of celestial elves, and I am so thrilled to get to this point in the story because please give me more lore. I find it super interesting that there are a handful of Skywing elves with wings, which is strange to me because, like, how are they recruiting these elves, right? Because less than 1 in 10 Skywing elves are born with wings. So, I want to know how they're recruiting them. But it does seem like there are a few elves who are wingless. Like this elf on the bottom right corner, they seem to not have wings. But anyway, I wonder if perhaps the celestial elves are all out of sorts because they suddenly have visitors and, they are in a remote area. And this also makes my mind wander to something Cassie said about looking for one of the many Star Touch prophecies. And I would love it if there was a prophecy about an elf and a human arriving at the Star Nexus. And, the Star Primal seems pretty close to Destiny, and Destiny simply goes hand in hand with prophecy. Or maybe the prophecy could be about a human mage who finally connects to the Star Primal, and that's how we get this shot of Callum amongst the stars with that blindfold on. But that aside, if we move through the scenes here, we see Rayla telling Callum that the fate of the entire world is at stake. Maybe because they don't know how they're supposed to get up there, and Rayla's probably like, go on without me. But, Callum is gonna be like, I could just carry you. And maybe that's how shenanigans will happen and the prison will fall. And that's how we get to Stella falling and she's holding onto the pearl. But, rest assured, because here comes this beautiful Skywing maiden to the rescue. And if you look to this other elf here, they are wingless at first, but they seem to sprout these transparent butterfly-like wings, and they seem rather different to Mana's Pluma Volantis because, as the spell suggests, it gives you feathers, and this celestial elf seems to be doing something entirely different. It is not within the realm of impossibility because in book 2, we get this beautiful short story or legend of a girl who took to the skies with wings made of wax. So, I'm sure that throughout time, there have been many attempts by wingless skywing elves to try to reach the sky and fly. And if we take a look at this clip here, this could explain how Rayla is flying because her wings only extend as far as her arm length, and that is very similar to this flying elf. And I imagine that this scene of them flying into the sunset is probably them making their way out of the Starscraper. But before we leave the Starscraper entirely, let's not forget about this other clip where we have Rayla and Callum looking out through this wonderfully crafted window, and we see Callum's belongings to the side there, and we also see these beautiful webs probably made by star-weaving spiders, and we also see Rayla wrapping her hand around Callum's shoulder, which does come off a little bit unreciprocated, but I think that this could be the point where Aaravos has escaped and maybe she's trying to comfort him. But setting those adventures aside, we see Janai at the Sunseed Garden and we see her entering Heat Being mode and lighting up the roots of this tree as she cries. And I hope that this is her trying to keep it alight somehow and not like destroying it. But this moment also sort of breaks my heart because I feel like Janai always knew that she couldn't trust Karim. Like, when she shows him the sunseed, her posture is contained and insecure, so I feel like she knew that it was too early to show him that treasure, but perhaps she felt obligated because Kessa probably showed it to her as the second in line for the throne, and then Janai found herself in a similar position, but she seemed unsure of wanting to show it to him to begin with. We then have Karim raising his hands to the heavens, wearing white and gold, having fully crowned himself, and we see that this crown is more extravagant and more closely resembling Sol Ragem's horns, and I absolutely love this shot because it's giving fanatic or like he's in way over his head, and I couldn't help but notice that someone got him his ring back, the one that his mother gave him, and I'm personally invested in it. I want to know what his mother told him, and I genuinely can't help but think that this ring means something as to what Karim's role was supposed to be. Like, when he's stripped of it, he says it's neither silver nor gold, it's made out of tin, and I can't help but feel like that is significant to him being the third born prince. I hope we get more on that. But anyway, we also get to see him wearing Osato's red glove, and if you don't know the story behind that, basically, Karim set out with his best friend, Captain Osato, and a group of his soldiers, including a human from Katalis, but Osato ends up with a scratch from a panther, and he tragically dies. And it's a pretty terrible death, too, because he got a scratch on his arm, protecting Karim, I might add. But of course, just the scratch is enough to deal the damage, and once they have run to safety out of Lux Aria, Osato notices the scratch on his arm, and he quickly assesses the situation, and he asks Karim to chop off his arm to stop the spread, but Karim hesitates, and Tijana quickly responds to chop it off, except it's too late, and he begins to fully corrupt, and Karim tries to cleanse him with the spell Post Tenebris Lux, which is what he planned to use on the Sunforge, but it doesn't work and it makes Osato hostile, so he lunges towards the mage with the light, which gives Tijana an opening and she puts an end to his misery. Karim lashes out at the human because she killed him, she's human and therefore an other and an outsider, and he feels like she wasn't Osato's friend to begin with, and he drives her away and he buries him alone, and by the end there he finds Osato's red glove and he keeps it. So that's the tea on the red glove. But anyway, after Karim, we see the sunseed floating and runes are circulating it, and I can imagine that this scene is when he is sadly wasting the sunseed to heal Sol Ragem as the defecting Sunfire Elves watch. It's so disappointing, but I hope it at least works because his last brilliant idea of healing the Sunforge did not work, so, fingers crossed for him, I guess. I also don't know that using the Sunseed will use up all its light. It's possible that it's similar to a Primal Stone in that it can be used for more than one spell, and hopefully Janai can recuperate it. I don't know if that's me just clinging onto Moonlight, but I want Janai to be the foundational queen that she wants to be, and that requires the hope and nurturing of the Sunseed. But if not, I am hoping that Karim will at least end up blind by the end of the series, or generally speaking, meet a similar end to Sol Ragem, where his pride, bigotry, and superiority complex is what spells out his doom, and I am of the opinion that he is set up to lose, and his fatal flaws are that he overestimates himself, he underestimates the people who surround him, including those he calls friends, and he is also impatient, which always leads to him trying to deal a final blow much too early. Either way, I'm really looking forward to all of this, and I don't know if it's like a relatively unpopular opinion, but I have always been invested in this plotline from the start. Yes, including the human and elf conflict, but yeah. We're almost approaching the end here. We then see Zym coming to Ezran's rescue. It appears like he and Corvus have been kidnapped by the defecting Sunfire Elves. We see Miana and one of Janai's former guards, traitor. But Karim's stand has a slick, dark design, and he has plastered his emblem on their banners to resemble his crown and his color scheme. And we also see a tapestry depicting Sol Ragem, and I really like this overall design. I think this means that they will fall together, or at least in a similar fashion. We then have Janai and Amaya riding into battle on twin-tailed Inferno Tooth Tigers, and it looks like some Sunfire Elves did stay loyal to her. We see a confrontation with Sol Ragem, and his eyes are blue and I don't see them, so it's possible that this healing spell didn't work on his eyes after all, but his wings do look like they're not tattered, so perhaps the Sunseed was able to heal only that. And last but not least, we end with the remnants of a fire as Aaravos calls out for Claudia, telling her, I am here.
I am here.
It is so haunting and I'm ready for it. I can only assume that this will be an extremely vulnerable moment for Claudia where Aaravos can show up as her only hope and light, her midnight star, and I think this will be the official start of Claudia's villain arc where she no longer has anything to lose. That's most of everything that I have to say on these clips, and I'm gonna be honest, y'all. I am unequivocally excited and I'm looking forward to season 6. Make no mistake, I'm sure there's gonna be lots of action, but I'm also currently trying to readjust my expectations for what I can expect because the moon is whispering that I don't think we're going to get a lot of Aaravos. Now, I could be entirely wrong about this. Absolutely. At the time of recording this, it is still a moonless night. So, the moon could be playing a phantom trick on me. And this is just me talking out of the void of my mind. Okay, fair. But there is a method to my madness. And the basis on which I'm making this claim is the trailer. Generally speaking, I don't really like trailers because I feel like they give away too much. And of course, it makes sense because trailers are snippets and more specifically highlights of a movie or a show. So you always go in knowing what to expect. That is the point of them. Of course, there is room for mystery because a minute is very different to a few hours worth of content. But again, that minute is supposed to capture the entirety of the season. And if you go back and watch each of the season trailers, you can see, yeah, they capture most of everything that happened. So my point is just to say that I'm not really expecting to see Aaravos come to the forefront in the slightest because I think his story is just going to be told in season 7. Now, I do feel like that's not very hype of me. I'm sorry, but I can only speak for myself when I say that I don't want to be disappointed because I had unreasonable expectations. Like, the only things that are being set up here are a climax between Janai and Karim, which stems from the tension between humans and elves, and Aaravos escaping his prison. That's it. Season 4 was introducing us back to the world of Sadia after the time skip. Season 5 was about finding the prison, and season 6 is just gonna be about setting him free. So, yeah, that's not a bad thing. Again, I am looking forward to this season. I'm just readjusting myself and my expectations a little bit. But I've already ran out of hot brown morning potion, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. What are you expecting to see this season? What did you catch that I didn't mention? Do you think Viren will return to Catolis? Is Rayla flying with the help of the celestial elves? What do you think will be the fate of the Sunseed, Sol Ragem, and the Sunfire elves? And of course, will we finally see Pip this season? Only the stars know, but tell me all your thoughts in the wicked depths below. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown. If you did, I'd love it if you hit the pretty like button, subscribe if you want to join this beautiful moon nexus, and hit the bell if you want to be notified whenever the stars align. But until then, Tenebras post Lux.